I'd like to welcome you all to this session this evening. My name is Kathleen Crivero, and I'm a distinguished lecturer at the City University of New York School of Public Health and Health Policy in the Department of Health Policy and Management. And I'm joined tonight by students from different courses within the school and by Dr. Paul Zeitz. And I'd like to start by introducing Dr. Zeitz. This will be followed by a discussion with him on a number of issues, and then an open discussion with CUNY students who are with us this evening. Dr. Paul Zeitz is a preventive medicine physician, an epidemiologist, and an author. He's also a champion of social justice and human rights. Dr. Zeitz has a distinguished career working in the UN, specifically UNICEF, and in the US government, including USAID, the Centers for Disease Control, and the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, as well as a number of civil society organizations. He's also founded and/or strengthened several global coalitions and movements, including the Global AIDS Alliance, the Global Action for Children, Keep Kids Safe, and the BRAVE movement, which are both focused, the last two are focused on ending sexual violence against children, which was a specific subject looked at by the students in the violence prevention class. And I'd just like to mention, as I did in my announcement on Dr. Zeitz's presentation tonight, that some of his coalitions have had some fairly amazing results, including the establishment of the Global Fund on AIDS, TB, and Malaria, about which several students in HPAM 628 wrote in their recent discussion posts. And today, Dr. Zeitz contributes to a range of social justice initiatives, including the U.S. National Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Movement, the Alliance for Jewish Renewal, and the Survivors Council of the HEAT Initiative, which is also focused on ending childhood sexual violence. I've asked Dr. Zeitz to take time out of his incredibly busy schedule to talk to us about three main issues. And the reason that I brought the two classes together is what he's going to talk about tonight cuts across what we're discussing in both classes. And I think there's a richness in looking at them in a holistic way. The first is the subject of Paul's second recent book called Revolutionary Optimism: 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. And this book sets out a practical strategy for dealing with the anxiety and the hopelessness that sometimes sets in when we live in a world and in a country that's beset by so many simultaneous crises. I've also asked Paul to cover tonight his newest initiative, which I have the pleasure of being at least tangentially involved in, called Unify USA, which is a citizens' movement to refresh the Constitution and make it more representative of all Americans. And the third subject is how all of this, the concept of revolutionary optimism, as well as Unify USA and some of the other actions that Dr. Zeitz is involved in, how all of them act as an interrupter of political violence. The students in particularly in HPAM 695, have been looking at violence prevention in the same way as we look at the prevention of other contagious diseases. It needs to be understood, interrupted through evidence-based interventions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. So with no further hesitation or delay, I will start by asking Dr. Zeitz, whom I will call Paul for the rest of this session, to provide a brief overview of how revolutionary optimism reflects, how does it reflect your past learning from your activism around social justice, and how is it influencing your approach to activism now and in this time of political turbulence? So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Kathleen and Jose, for inviting me. And it's great to see you all, such beautiful faces. I feel so honored. Thank you, Kathleen, for this honor to connect with your students and your university. It's just really the best way to spend this time in my life, honestly. And Kathleen, thank you for your leadership throughout your whole journey. Kathleen and I have worked together for, we think we've calculated it as 38 years together. We first met when she was a leader in UNICEF, and then she was a high-level leader in the UN system running top leadership of UNAIDS, the UN Special Program for HIV/AIDS. I think she ran a major foundation for a decade. And then we've really gotten to work together in the last 5 years on these movements, the Brave movement and the now on hashtag Unify USA. So it's just like it's a blessing and an honor. So you don't know who you're meeting now in your young life, where you're at in your young life. You may still be connected to them when you're in other phases of your life. So it is about relationships, honestly, and it's about building trust and connection with other people. So that's what makes it fun, actually, too. Um, yeah, thank you for that generous introduction. It's been a journey. So while Kathleen, shouted out some of the successes where I played a role, and of course I'm just a node in a network of actors. I'm just one person or one organization or one, but I play a particular, I figured out what my gift is, which is to be a catalytic enzyme. I don't know if anyone here ever had biochemistry or biology and enzymes. They create speed with something happening like a biological process. So I was a biology major in college, so I like kind of figured out like enzymes. I loved biochemistry. Like, how does this all happen? How can we make it happen faster? How can we bring our dream of how reality should be into reality as fast as possible? So that's how I operate as an enzyme. So when I in 2023, I like realized no 2022, I realized that 2024 was going to be a cluster mess for humanity and for our country. I just had that sense that something troubling was coming. So I decided to write Revolutionary Optimism. And I was like, I love that title. I came up with it. I worked with this group called the Book Doulas. They helped me birth the book. It's like writing a book is like a PhD. you know, you it's soul searching, research, you're learning, hyper learning, like you are all in academia. You're in a hyper learning phase. It's such a fun time. So I wrote Revolutionary Optimism, and it's a handbook for these times. And I wrote it with the kind of the sense like I wished I had this when I was 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. I would have even taken it when I was 60. I'm 62 now. So it's 7 steps for living as a love-centered activist. And the first 3 steps are really about one's internal journey, like what goes on in our hearts, our minds, our souls, our relationship with spirituality, and how we create ourselves for who we're being in the world. It's about self-liberation. So we're liberating ourselves into our highest self. And then step 4 is the heartbeat of the book, and it's called peace crafting. It's how we relate to other people. And then the last 3 steps of the book are about like love-centered, peaceful revolutionary movements, best practices, basically. And it's about collective liberation. So it's like the chemistry between self-liberation and collective liberation. That's the journey of revolutionary optimism. So yeah, it's good because like I learned and I grew so much. I got these like insights into my own understanding of reality by writing the book, and I'm living into it. Like I am a revolutionary optimist, and as a doctor, and I have the obligation to let you know that revolutionary optimism is contagious. You might want to explore it. You might even feel some revolutionary optimism. It has that effect. Just like bravery is contagious. Kathleen and I learned that from the Brave movement. I'm a survivor of earlyhood childhood sexual violence at the hands of my father. I had a complete amnesic barrier for 40 years. It was in my late 40s that I kind of had a memory flood, and I was shattered. And then I had to recreate myself. But all the work that I did for all those decades that Kathleen was citing was when I was like fighting for justice, and I kind of like resonated with like seeing a more positive world. And there was something about me, like I would go to Africa. I lived in Africa for 4 years. I went to the worst, the poorest villages, and I went into the households where the women were dying of AIDS and their children were crying. They're sitting there. I went to the malnutrition wards, like where children were dying of malnutrition in their mother's arms, screaming. It was like hell on earth. And I don't know. Somehow I would go and expose myself to all that, and then try to figure out how to solve it. Like and like kind of imagine that it was solvable, and it is solvable. So that's my work in the world is really just to close the implementation gap, what it is currently and what it could be.
Great. That's great, Paul. And how, from that, so you spent that 2022 like steeped in birthing or articulating revolutionary optimism. Then how did Unify USA emerge? And particularly for one of the classes, we're looking at coalitions versus movements versus, so how do you see Unify USA and what is it trying to do?
Great, thank you so much. Yes, so when I was started writing the book in 22, 23, I also launched something called #Unify Movements. And that was a movement building platform and the mission of the broader Unified Movements was to be a movement building platform to place love at the center of our social, economic, and political systems. So that was its kind of vision. So quickly, early on in 23, I realized, like, as an American, I live here now, I had to focus on #Unify USA. So I had to figure out, like, what was possible here in the United States about putting love at the center of our social, economic, and political systems. Because it's not actually how it feels like it is occurring right now to most Americans. So it's like there's a big implementation gap with that idea and the current reality. So I long, felt that as a doctor, actually, and as a public health professional, like you're all public health professionals, and we have to look at the systems, and we have to look at the root causes. We have to look at the risk factors, and the whole public health model. So my view was that we had the root cause of it is that our Constitution is rotten, and now it's completely collapsed. And the way I see it is that the heart of America has died, and we're in a time where that is how it is. And we as a doctor, what happens when the heart dies? You do a heart transplant. You give it a new heart. You do it now. You don't wait. So that's where Unify USA became focused on hitting refresh on the U.S. Constitution, and we're proposing citizens' assemblies to be held in all 50 states this year, and then regional and thematic citizens' assemblies happening in early 2026. And all those assemblies will be providing recommendations on what the refreshed Constitution should look like. And then the idea is we're going to have a national citizens' assembly in June of next year, and we're going to we're going to refresh the Constitution, a citizen-driven process, and then we're going to have it ratified by popular vote. We have the technology to do that, and verified popular vote online. And we will then celebrate on July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary. We're going to celebrate the second peaceful American Revolution. and a refreshed constitution. We have 15 months from now. That's Unify USA. So, I mean, I have to be a revolutionary optimist to think that we can actually do that. And actually, it is happening. I'm so excited. We launched in February 17th, 6 weeks ago, and the momentum is like beyond my wildest dreams. It's moving. That we have liftoff. We're now in booster phase. I don't know if we'll make it to the atmosphere and we'll succeed. It could still crash and burn. And Kathleen didn't talk about all the failures that I've had. I fail forward though. I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of breakdowns. I had a lot of campaigns and movements that didn't even get liftoff. They collapsed. uh, Failed attempts. But you get to learn from all that as well.
And how, just for
And
those of us,
I'm putting some info in the chat about all that.
okay, for those of us who are not steeped in activism as you are, Paul, how do you get it started? I mean, we understand the words you just said, but like how do you look at 15 months and you start from, sitting in your office and thinking, okay, we got to refresh the Constitution. How do you get this kind of a movement going? And how do you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the first part of it is like ignite the revolutionary spirit of the moment. And I think Senator Cory Booker was a great example of that. And like he was taking a stand. Like we have to interrupt normal business. We cannot have like we can't act like this is like a Mitt Romney presidency. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. And we will not put up with it. And we will not tolerate anti-democratic forces and elite control of our government that looks out for their self-interest and not the interests of the people. And the people are fed up with it. So we're building an interpartisan citizens movement. And this interpartisan approach is what we used in the AIDS movement. And that's where I learned it. The AIDS movement had interpartisan support for 21 years, announced by George Bush, supported by Obama, supported by Donald Trump in his first term, supported by Joe Biden, and it was killed and crashed in January of this year, January, February. Destroyed USAID, closed CDC, destroyed PEPFAR, and that whole initiative that the United States invested about $110 billion in over those 21 years and saved, I don't know, 50, 60 million lives from AIDS, TB, and malaria. And brought goodwill to the United States around the world. We were for the common good. We were for human rights for all. We were for the value of every human life being equal. And that is like the spirit of what America should be, in my opinion. We should be standing for the common good, not for self-interest and greed and violence and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of the link to your political violence prevention, just quickly, I can talk more about this, but I see what we're up to as violence prevention, political violence prevention. Like we're not in a civil war yet. So we can still create these ideas.
And what challenges are you preparing for with hashtag Unify USA? Like what do you, because we've been talking about how movements or collaboratives and coalitions have more structure than movements. Like what Paul's building now is really, it's a movement of movements. He's trying to bring all different groups working on various different crises, bring them together to look at this as a whole, and that we have to address all these crises in a refreshed constitution, right? But we've learned about how collaboratives like this or movements like this, they have problems getting everyone to agree on what the actual issue is, what the key issue is. And with hashtag Unify USA, the key issue is around refreshing the Constitution, right? So there's no purity tests except, that you need to share values. But in other words, if your key interest is the environment or your key issue is sexual reproductive rights, there's room for you in this movement, right? And then we've also learned about positioning. So how do you position refreshing the Constitution so that it doesn't sound like crazy talk and it actually sounds like some things people. So if you can talk a little bit about that, Paul, and then how do you go get the building blocks of finding people and groups that will work with you to do this? And how do you govern it? Or do you even try to govern it? Is the other question.
Yes, wow. This is such a great conversation. Like I don't get to have this kind of in-depth, thoughtful conversation a lot. So I appreciate it. Just one really important distinction I want to offer for consideration is a coalition is a group of organizations that agree to work together and they create a leadership group and they have an agenda that they're pursuing. And I call that they become a noun. Like they become a noun in the ecosystem, and they become like a clique. And so like and then you have to look at it, what I do, and from a movement perspective, and what movement people do is they look at it from an ecosystem perspective, like a public health perspective, like you're training in that realm. So it's like we have to look at the whole picture. So when you're looking, you look at what you're trying to get done. We're trying to build love-centered, whatever, social, economic, and political systems. You have to see who else is acting in the system. There's lots of coalitions. There's lots of networks. They did a mapping of the bridging movement, which was a depolarizing movement. This is for your violence prevention. After Trump first got elected in 2016, there was a birthing in the United States of a bridging movement. Thousands of organizations launched. More Perfect Union, Braver Angels, Listen First Project, Living Room Conversation, literally thousands all over the country to depolarize. So that was like violence prevention, preventing political violence. They learned how to talk together with people with different views. That's what it's intended to do. At the same time, there was a democracy movement that got birthed. Because it was all focused externally, like we were exporting democracy. That was one of the kind of roles that the United States plays. So all those folks, and were domestic people working on our domestic democracy because we know it's flawed. All that got intensified in 2016 after Trump won. But then they worked for the last 8 years and look at where we are. I don't think they did a very good job because we're in a mess. Democracy has not been transformed. And the bottom line is that you can't fix this by whoever you elect. It's not the next election. Everyone is so focused on it being who's the leader, and it doesn't matter who the leaders are. The system's completely broken. The Constitution was written by 55 white male landowners, slave owners. They wrote it with quills and candlelight. They got around by horse and buggies. They wrote it for a different time. And we're still trapped under it. And what the insight that I got when I wrote Revolutionary Optimism was that we are living in a caste system. Isabel Wilkerson wrote a book about caste. And she said that it's about the oppression of one group of people over the other. And it shapeshifts. So Israelis over Palestinians is a caste system. Nazis over Jews and gypsies and Poles and gays was a caste system. The caste system in India, is another kind of caste system. So this is just one group trying to oppress another group of people. So in the United States, our current constitution is designed as a caste system. And it's working like a charm. But we're done with it. The majority of people don't want to live under that anymore. So that's the ecosystem. We are a movement, and the idea of unify, it's like a weave. It's weaving threads together, like a matrix. And our idea is we're not creating another vertical campaign. We In movement building, you try to create a keystone change that can connect a lot of different interests and you create an alignment. And all the nouns are working under that that frame, which allows it to continue to expand. So as you build momentum around that agreement, you get a core, and then it expands, and then you get transformation. That's what happened in the AIDS movement. The Brave movement is still trying to expand and have that kind of political impact. It hasn't had it yet. And we're using a movement building strategy where so the AIDS movement was donate the dollars, treat the people, drop the dead. And the Brave movement was prevention, healing, and justice of childhood sexual violence. And our keystone change for Unify USA is citizens' assemblies, which is a form of democracy where love and truth can be restored to politics, to refresh the Constitution.
And it starts with the living room conversations, Paul, right? So, I mean, the idea is that people will start by just getting
in dorm rooms and families, yes, and offices and churches, and we want to create a conversation, yes, living room conversation on the Constitution. We have a self-facilitated guidebook that's coming out. It was supposed to come out yesterday, but so it's still not done yet. We're putting in a civic credentialing badge. It's the first time ever that that's being introduced in one of these guides, and we're going to be able to know who's doing it. And we're going to provide data. We're very committed to showing the data and evidence that it will be interpartisan, because the interpartisan nature of Unify USA is critical for our gaining political legitimacy. We have to be able to prove that.
Right. Good. I see Crystal has a question. Crystal, why don't you?
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time to share with us and everything. I really appreciate it. This is part feedback and part question. Since we've talked a lot about in our global health migration class on like positioning, framing, and defining the problem clearly, I have seen a lot of movements. We could talk about defund the police, we could talk about Black Lives Matter, all of these things. One thing I notice is that, or two things I notice about all of these in common is one, still their frameworks leave a lot of ambiguity about what exactly you want, and two, a lot of times these get taken by conservatives or Republicans or whatnot and made into a whole new problem. And I see a lot of good intentioned people come up with these, but they still succumb to it because they're not properly prepared for that. So when I hear you speak about hit refresh on the Constitution in terms of clearly defining what you want, the first thing that comes to mind is like, do you want to do you feel we need to defend our Constitution and we have to defend what we currently have under the Trump administration? Or what it seems more like you're saying is we need to completely change it. And the thing you want to be careful about is the opposition also wants to change it, but just not in the way that you probably do. And I think really, I do think this is a good idea, but I think the slogan itself will succumb to the same things. I have seen a lot of other progressive things come about. Like when people say defund the police, there was a lot of do you mean just like get rid of the police? Do you mean just this? Like, and it was used against them and it died very quickly. So I just want to know, like, the feedback part is I think you should clarify that more. The question part is how will you protect yourself against bad actors who will ultimately try to rearrange the meaning of what you want?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That was really thoughtful. So, a couple things. I think, I think Black Lives Matter and defund the police, for example, are contributing to this moment of possibility that we're entering now. I think the Palestinian liberation movement is as well, the climate activist movement, the anti-war activist movement, the economic justice movement. I think that what we're seeing is a convergence of intersectionality. Like everyone's getting that all these things are interrelated. Like, the concept of intersectionality is now, it's happening organically in the movements now. And there's tactical opportunities. When I was writing Revolutionary Optimism, I read a book. I can't remember the name of it. It's in the references here, but this guy studied the movements that were happening globally, the people-driven movements between 2010 and 2020. It was the most global proportion of people mobilizing in human history. And they found that some, these revolutionary opportunities, some of them succeeded and some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't, the people are rising, and then there will be a backlash, as you rightfully point out. And then the backlash can win, and it can become oppressive. Or the thing that they identified in this book that was missing is that you have to have a plan for a new government, the next government, or the transformation that you want, and then you can make it through. So all we're doing with Unify USA is being ready and resilient. We don't know how this is going to unfold, but we're going to be ready and resilient with this option to be on the table for the American people to choose. Because this is a we moment thing. This is like a collective, like, okay, we're going to do that. Then the other part of your question I want to quickly respond to is like, what is the ecosystem about actors or movements actually that are trying to overhaul the Constitution right now? Because you made this point. It's true. The anti-democracy forces and the elite control oligarchs are trying to rewrite the Constitution. In fact, they've already shredded the Constitution, and they're creating new rules every day. You hear it in the news cycle. That's one thing going on. Then in civil society, and that's why as public health practitioners, you might be in the government sometimes, or you might be in the private sector, or you might be in civil society. So you always have to understand what's going on inside and outside as part of understanding positioning. And you also raised that. So there are 3 civil society movements. In 2023, there was only one. It was called the Convention of States Action. It's a MAGA-run movement trying to refresh the Constitution or overhaul the Constitution in a hyper-partisan way. It's the folks that did the Tea Party back in 2011, 2012, and they now created this thing to rewrite the Constitution only with the minority rule. Kind of like Jim Crow is how I see it. And like they have control of the House and the federal government right now. So they are on this, they think they got the momentum to do it. So that's them. They're aligned with the anti-democratic forces. Then in 2023, a group was called Democracy 2076 was formed. It's interpartisan, and they are running around the country building a movement about thinking about how to amend the Constitution by 2076. No, they really don't want to wait that long. That's 52 years from now, but they want us to think about the future so that when we're rewriting our Constitution, we're imagining how society will evolve over that period of time. So they've developed a lot of tools and really great thinking about that. So then Unify USA came in at the same time in 2023, and we're saying we're a citizen-driven movement. No one else is doing that. We're engaging the public. And we're not creating a vertical. We're kind of trying to weave everything together. And we have an action forcing opportunity moment. That's the key thing with movements. We have July 4th, 2026. That's what I call an AFO, an action forcing opportunity. Like we're going to build this movement and drive energy momentum. And I'm a Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I think is my greatest teacher, actually. And he teaches about the fierce urgency of now. So Unify USA is bringing what I call now energy. And we're doing it with healing, repair, love-centeredness. We're trying to, that's the only way we can beat this, this other thing. So we're creating a new lane. It's a new path of possibility. It's interpartisan. We're inviting former and current politicians to come in pairs, like a Republican and a Democrat. Like, don't come as just left Democrats. Come with an R and a D. Be rad. Thank you so much. Crystal, quickly, I'm going to respond to your question with putting something in the chat here, which answers like how the framework for preparing. Oh, it's too long. I'll have to do it in a couple different. It's a part of. I'm coming out with a book on May 1st about this stuff, and this is a section from the book. So let me just try to put that to you. In terms of the situation that we're in, I would refer you to Protect Democracy has a framework, which is like the authoritarian playbook. And they've been publishing it like every 2 years. There is a playbook that these folks use, these anti-democratic and elite controlling forces use around the world. It's well understood. And so what we're witnessing and what we're experiencing is they're rolling out the playbook. They're still in an early stage of it, but they're moving with great velocity, but there's still some instability. And all the resistance that that is happening is great. There are people that support what's going on. Then there are people that are trying to leverage it. They want to get what they can out of it. Then there's the resistance that are opposing it and trying to prevent it from getting worse. And all that is needed and important. And people can choose what lane they're in. And what I'm proposing is a new fourth lane of being ready to create a new system and a new government. So the question I'm asking everyone, and I'll ask you all as well, is like, how do we, the domino question is like, if we think that another election is going to solve this, like that's what the Democrats are saying now. 2026, everyone gets so excited about the judge in Wisconsin, like that's going to solve this. We know that won't solve it. We have to get at the system. That's the, that's the flip. And then if people start, a lot of people are at that point and saying, we got to fix the system. So we're working with all of those. We're trying to connect them and weave them, and we're gaining momentum. So it's a process. And if we fail, we'll fail forward. We'll try again in 2028, the next political cycle. And we'll have made some great progress, I'm sure.
Okay, Natasha.
Hi, Dr. Zeitz. I mean, my mind is blown. I think this is amazing. I'm definitely feeling the contagion of your positivity. I have so many thoughts.
I warned you. Okay.
Yeah, no, I have so many thoughts. I mean, the first one is I feel like there needs to be like, and it's kind of what you're doing. And it was my first intro to public health around like a way of, the different ways of organizing and this approach of organizing through like collective awakening. And
Yes.
like that, I recognize a lot of what you're doing feels that way. I'm originally from France. Friar.
Wait. So you guys are so smart. I don't even know. I would love to learn about that. If you could put a link up in the chat.
Happily, yeah.
I've been learning for preparing for this, like all these papers that Kathleen sent me that you're reading. I learned a lot. Thank you so much about the concept of preventing political violence. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. The Sousa article. I learned a lot from that Sousa article. So we're always learning,
Absolutely. And I think that's like step one. Like I'm originally from France and we're on our 5th constitution. I think sometimes Americans don't even realize that this is an option. And so the questions always end up being, but what about the Democrats? What about the Republicans? Like you need to think beyond that. We can sit down and have a conversation about how it should work better. We need to stop. We've been brainwashed to think that this is the only way. And so we're trying to fix things within the existing structures and paradigm. but like those don't have to always be there, and other countries have successfully done so. Germany has rewritten its constitution after World War II. There's no reason we can't do the same. I guess my question is more around, you talked about these citizen assemblies. I feel like, how does this connect to your book around radical positivity, revolutionary positivity, where you place love at the center of the conversation? I think historically, Christianity has been at the center. Now it's profit that's at the center of, like, it's kind of like the guiding force that drives some of the decisions. And like, is love kind of a paradigm that we're organizing around? And like, how do you bring that to the conversation without sounding like, you know, I'll use like sounding woo-woo or sounding too hippie for American people. So I don't know, this isn't a very well phrased question, but there's going to need to be like a reference point as to how you view a problem and the solution. And like, do you plan to bring that, and does that connect to your book around positivity?
Yeah, Revolutionary Optimism is the book, and it's about, no, it's okay. Great question. Thank you. Honestly, I love talking with all you. I'm learning a lot. Is about living the path of love. And that's what when I described like self-liberation, it's about self-love. It's about loving thy neighbor, loving community, family, and living with love. So I had to learn how to control the dragon in my mind, and I would be nasty. So I was a very angry person, actually. I had my advocacy for those successful years was anger-driven, inner anger-driven. But it was toxic for me personally. It ate me up. So anyway, it was, I learned, I grew, I failed forward, whatever. So that was the path of love. And my relationships, I'm married, I have 5 sons, having a family was all part of it. And then the love in the world. I have traveled many parts of the world, and I see love everywhere. I see families connecting, and it's like the human language. And laughter is the best human language that connects all of us. But love is everywhere, and everyone is just trying to do their best with whatever circumstances they're given. So, I really believe that our work is about like unifying, coming together, and finding ways to actually, like, my visions for the world. It's not unique to me. A lot of people have them. When I started working on this Constitution, I can't tell you how many people have sent me their ideas for a refreshed Constitution. So they were having the same idea. So now we're all coming together, and we're actually going to make it happen.
It is interesting, Natasha. I think this idea of so you're not taking, it's not a Christian frame or religious, you're taking kind of love and empathy as your frame. And I too, I'm always afraid, when I read Paul's book, which really makes it all make sense. So I recommend the book, but I'm always afraid that people are going to be turned off by that and say, "Ooh, that's like, granola speak or something," like if you're talking. But it was interesting that Cory Booker talked about love a lot in his.
Oh, he did? I didn't know that.
25, oh yeah, in his 25 hours. It was just an interesting perspective. But Jessica, maybe you want to ask your question you asked in the chat. I think it's an important one to ask maybe out loud.
Yeah, of course. I just didn't want to interrupt. So I was kind of asking the question after Professor Zeitz already responded to Stephanie's question. And it kind of got me thinking, if this interpartisan movement is meant to outflank the oligarch elites, how does it avoid becoming that kind of elite structure itself? Like, who gets to define what Unify does? Like, I'm hearing all these like thoughts of change and like uniting everyone, but I'm not hearing like specific changes. So like, who's deciding that and who's left out? And then how would the existing systems respond to that?
Yes, those are great questions. Thank you. So I've been working on this for 30 years. I've had like 6 prior experiments. I felt like in December, after I realized what it was going to happen, what was happening, that it was like I had to go forward with it. So my wife and I are very privileged, and we provided $180,000 of seed funding to establish Unify USA as a 501c4, which is a kind of organization that can do political action. I wanted to do a PAC, and I've done many C3s. I started a political party once called the Justice Party USA. So I did a political party national committee. I didn't want to do anything the same again. So anyway, the lawyers convinced me to do a C4. And I brought on Lee Blake, who's a creative marketing kind of person who created that logo with some creative person that she works with. And our whole brand, the whole thing was done by experts. We brought on a group called People First, which is a top digital marketing firm. So they created the website and the 8 social media. We're interpartisan. So we're on Twitter and we're on TikTok and we're on all that. And it's early days. We have thousands of citizens that have signed up so far. Not nothing, but not enough. And we have liftoff. So we've also been building collaborations and partnerships with what I call backbone networks or backbone networks. So we have a whole network called Assemble the Field. This is all the practitioners and experts that know how to design and create and plan for citizens' assemblies. And then we're also connected with another network, backbone network called Better Together America. And they are a network of networks, of movements, building civic hubs, creating a space of nonpartisan space where people can come together. And so all we're doing is saying, we're calling for state citizens' assemblies to hit refresh on the Constitution. And then we're trying to catalyze that to happen by local networks and local folks weaving together and figuring out how they want to do it themselves. And we don't know what's going to happen. We're just creating my role is to create invitations for the possibility. I'm like serving the potential of this possibility. That's all I can do as one person. And so this is a bottom-up driven. So I don't know what people in Colorado or Wisconsin are going to do, but we're going to have Unify USA like accreditation. This was interpartisan, and we'll have like documentation and evidence, and we'll be open. We believe in open democracy and citizen driven. So whatever everyone comes up with, that'll all be known by everyone. So we'll all be learning together.
Alexa asked about the social media, so I think you would address that, Paul, that you're really using social media, but there's also a lot of, I find it interesting, there's also a lot of person-to-person contact in this thing. The citizens' assemblies are not remote, and the living room conversations are not remote, and that's probably important as part of the way this works. But Danielle, you also had an interesting question. Maybe you want to ask that you put in the chat.
Oh my God. How do I copy this?
Oh, sure. Thank you for this really insightful discussion. I feel very energized. So yeah, I kind of wanted to focus on the coalition building aspect of this movement. So like I mentioned in this question, to replace the country's heart involves a lot of key players. And I wanted to better understand how you infuse revolutionary optimism, love, and other aspects to keep this movement going in the face of the political turmoil, because it's very easy to give up hope, especially with what's been happening. And then secondly, I wanted to understand better who you identify as other catalysts. As you described yourself, you are a catalyst, and other people or organizations or other catalysts that could be involved to keep the movement going forward. And how you determined those people or organizations were catalysts. Particularly in the health sector, I'm quickly learning that with a lot of coalitions, they tend to stay in the health world, which is very easy to bond with other people who clearly have the same goals and intentions in mind. However, that only gets your reach but so far. You also have to involve other industries and sectors to further that reach. However, their intentions and what they prioritize may not always be health focused. So also how you identify those catalysts, whether they're directly linked to the goals of Unify USA or tangentially linked, how you identify those key people.
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so I'm just speaking what I understand my truth is about that. My wisdom from my life's journey is that love is at the center. And so I'm asking the question, this is how I'm living my life. How can I walk? What is the path of love if I'm walking with love? What does that look like? How do the words that come out of my mouth come? What's my every breath with, living on the path of love? And so it's like an exploration. It's an ongoing journey of trying to figure that out, discernment and exploring that. So when I was in this I was in a training program about living the path of love, and I had this like vision. Oh, what if we put love at the center of our social, economic, and political systems? Like, what would that look like? So now I've been on that question. And it was like a lonely thing. Not a lot of people were talking about it then. But now I'm spending all day on Zooms and meetings talking to everyone about what the ratification process will be for the refreshed Constitution. I'm being drilled by people on like how to create political legitimacy on the ratification process. So I'm like in heaven. I don't know. The citizens are going to have to figure that out. I'm not deciding any of that. We have to do that together. I'm going to be shorter because we have a lot of questions teed up.
Yeah. Great, thanks. I think the order is Gemily, and then Tiffany, and then Emily.
Thank you so much. Definitely echoing many of us here that are very re-energized. I do have to say that it can be easy to be de-energized in today's times. So I think I have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. I do understand that love is very important, but also having a common language is important in creating and facilitating communication, especially between interpartisan groups. And what some groups may define the same word differently. We see that now a lot with using the DEI equity. One group defines it differently, the other defines it separately, and then it's being weaponized into so many different things. And I think a lot of organizations, even academic institutions, are feeling the push where they might have to cave so that they can't use that language. And I think that's really troubling. And in defining what love is, it can mean differently for different groups of people. So love can be community support, but can also be defined as the ability to provide food for their family. So that's like income stability. And I think part of that strategy is like, how can we kind of like ensure that we use the same language between different groups, and even within personally within our own families, which may have different beliefs, there's that disconnect. And I'm sorry if I have a second question, but we can always table that for later. But my second question was it was earlier, but I agree with revolutionizing, and it's really important. But I was wondering if you have any thoughts and ideas on how we can protect the interrupters who want to revolutionize and take a stand, but have very limited protections. And I'm actually referring to a lot of the international students who are, at risk for deportation just because they stood up for what they believed in. And yeah, and thank you.
Okay, great, Gemily. Well, maybe we'll take Tiffany and Emily, and you can respond together, perhaps, if that's okay.
How much more time do we have?
We have about another 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Right. Got it.
Okay, so Tiffany?
Yes. Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Zeitz. Also would like to echo the sentiments of everyone that's spoken so far, and I want to share my gratitude for you, speaking about this really powerful movement. My question is more so surrounding how I really appreciate, the concept of driving the force of love and empathy in this movement. And I think that's something that we have been losing a lot within our society. And we have been also gaining a sense of apathy towards one another as we just try to live and survive in our own means, especially in such a hyper-capitalist society. And so my question surrounds how do we move past, I guess, this sort of fatigue that I think the majority of the American people have right now, as we hear constant changes that this administration is making. I think it's put people in a state of perpetual shock, and also just at a, well, I'm not even surprised anymore kind of, reaction. And I think that's kind of keeping us at a state where of fear, and also just we're not mobilizing because of that. And so I want to keep this short because I just have a lot of thoughts that are coming through. But yeah, what can we do to, I guess, get past that sense of fatigue and apathy and overall just sense of, I guess we're just all in a state of survival. And how can we come together in a sense to move past that and move towards actually revolutionizing and making changes that we need to see, the better side of, our society.
Yeah.
Great. And Emily.
Wait, I thought you said two. Now you're testing my.
Hello, and thank you once again, Dr. Zeitz, for your time today and speaking with all of us. And my question was kind of more on the topic of love. So I know that you touched on this issue earlier, but I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about how we can foster love between groups of people that may have no love for each other in a movement like Unify USA. I personally love the idea of mutual love for others and working together. And perhaps I'm a little cynical, but I kind of want to understand a little bit more about how it works in practice. Politics is very heterogeneous, and I feel that you can have someone that is very progressive on one front, but very conservative and in others. So for instance, you could have a climate activist that might not like the direction of how the Constitution is going now, but at the same time, that same person may harbor feelings of how maybe certain marginalized groups just don't deserve human rights. So people that are LGBTQ+, people that are people of color, non-men, etc. So I wanted to, I guess, learn a little bit more about how someone from one of those categories can work in a framework of love with other people like that, and how someone who doesn't believe that others should have rights foster love for them.
Okay, thanks. So Paul, let me just, one question around how do we be sure that people are understanding things in the same way, terms in the same way, like terms like love, and how is that sustained? How do you protect the interrupters? And I think that's an age-old question, like how do activists get protected when they have so little protection? How do you get people to have the energy to do something as ambitious as hit refresh on the Constitution when they can hardly get through their day? They're just being bombarded. And then this, how do you foster love across the divide, actually? Like how do you make that your organizing principle? So as you say, these are great questions. These are really great questions.
Yeah, so I'm in the chat. I'm responding with some of the answers. Quickly about, I think it's about language is about creating new language and about creating a new lane and a new reality, because words create reality. Like what we say is what becomes reality. It's really kind of crazy. Like Donald Trump says this, and he's creating an alternative reality. So we are proposing that we use our words to create a reality based on love and truth and human rights for all and human dignity. da 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 da. And so when I talk about love being the only power, that's a way of speaking about it. And I speak at, that's a blog that was an interspiritual frame on that. And interspiritual is like all the belief systems and all the people that don't believe in anything. So it includes all that. I define that in my book, and that's aligned with partisan. And the principle I haven't mentioned yet, which is really at the root of it, is interdependence. So all that I'm working on is about living into the truth of, isn't it true? We're actually all interdependent. Like what we all do affects everyone else. And that is like, we're awakening that truth through this movement and through these ideas. And you know, what I learned when I was like doing my exploration about Unify USA, what I found out is that citizens assemblies, they are happening all over the world. And they're rewriting constitutions all over the world. And they're writing government policy in cities and geographies all over the world right now. And the evidence shows that you can restore love and truth. And love is the essential ingredient. When people get out of their triggered state that someone mentioned, that when you're in your fear mode and you're paralyzed, when you come into a citizens assembly, you're in a space where you're learning together, you're deliberating, you're coming to consensus. You can't be in your dragon brain, you know? You got to be in a different mind state. And what they found out, it was love. And then truth can be shared and people can come up with win-win solutions. In fact, right now, 90% of Americans all agree on most issues, but it's this the collapsed political system that we're still trapped in. And so Gloria Steinem recently, I heard her speak last year. She said that we're making sense of this moment right now, you know, and she offered this, and I'm living with this. She said, we have to serve as hospice workers for the dying systems of the past. And we, at the same moment, we have to serve as midwives for birthing the new systems and the new reality. We get to live through that. I mean, I'm excited to be alive. And if we don't do it, we're going to have to live, and our children and grandchildren are likely going to have to live under an authoritarian oppression for a 40-year, 50-year cycle. That's what we're trying to prevent. So, and we're trying to prevent civil war, and we're trying to prevent political violence. So that's why we're doing all this for that. The last thing is about the movements. Crystal was talking about Black Lives Matter, and you raised movements like all the different movements that are happening now. And my belief and my observation is that there's a convergence happening. There's a confluence happening. There's organically and tactically. These movements recognize that all these issues are interrelated, and we're coming together now to fight this cause. And I do peaceful resistance. I'm actually on parole right now for getting arrested with climate defiance. And I ran onto the congressional baseball field with 7 20-year-olds, and we were arrested, held overnight, and then charged, and we all pled guilty, and we're all on parole till July 11th. And, you know, I just didn't know what else to do. Our Congress was playing baseball, and this event was sponsored by Chevron. I was just like, this is not sane. So I was acting sane, in my opinion, on that day.
Great, thanks, Paul. I think, Natasha, you have one more question?
Yeah, just sometimes I fear that we're in an echo chamber of people who agree. Like, you know, we all agree Donald Trump is insane. I mean, I'm making broad statements, but like there's a little bit of this echo chamber effect in these citizens' assemblies. Are we bringing, like, my aunt is from Western Pennsylvania, and her family has thoughts that I don't want to call crazy, but that's how they feel to me. And she looks at me and thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah.
We need to talk, right? Like, we need to
Right.
talk, because I profoundly believe that on some level, we all agree we will all want clean water, a roof over our head, our children to be safe.
Exactly.
Like, and then someone said, you know, it's a very good point, is that we're all constantly in a state of shock and fatigue, but is half the country actually, isn't half the country just excited and energized by what's happening? Like, are they fatigued? Are they coming to the table? Like, are we really merging both worlds and both realities in these conversations? And like, are you seeing that happening in conversations?
Yeah, so thank you for that. You know, we're going through a political party realignment. The Republican Party is fractured. You know, there's the anti-democratic forces, and there are the elite people that want to control through authoritarian rule, the oligarchs. And then there are principled Republicans. And then there's the MAGA public. And those are people that are just struggling and traumatized. And, you know, they found a, golden calf, a movement. But it's not about one person. This is a system of oppression that these people are living under. And the two-party duopoly, the political party system, it's also collapsed because the majority of Americans are now independent, and a lot of people are anti-partisan. The Democrats are split between progressives and moderates. The Republicans are split. There's a majority independents. There's third parties, and then there's disenfranchised. There were 75 million that voted for Kamala, 77 for Donald Trump, and 90 million eligible voters didn't vote. So we were on a call this week with people from Australia who were saying, we are mandated that we all have to vote. We all have a day off, and it's 100% participation. So our civic responsibility will have to shift. The citizens' assemblies is an opportunity for citizens' voices, lived experience from everyone. The key thing is that it's sortition-based, lottery selected. The thing you may know about is jury duty. You get randomly selected to be on a jury. And that's what we're proposing for citizens' assembly. So there will be MAGA people will be there, people with MAGA beliefs, and all the spectrum of beliefs and life experience. And what the evidence shows is that you come in with your extremes, and then you get to a rough consensus where 80% of the people agree to 80% of what is being recommended, never 100%. I don't even agree with myself all the time. So we're not expecting 100% agreement, Anyway, so that I wanted to share that part of why citizens' assemblies are so, powerful, and while there's this massive wave around the planet. And we recognize, lastly, all the people that are helping lead this they're from international and they work globally. We are globalists. And we believe that our success here in the United States has the opportunity to connect into global transformation. And we believe that we have to dismantle extractive capitalism, which is a form of caste system. It's an oppression. And we cannot solve the climate emergency under extractive capitalism. We can do it under regenerative economics and circular economy, which is already happening in a lot of places. Everyone's ready to shift to that. We just have to get rid of this dinosaurific legacy from the past. And, the majority of people are ready.
Thanks, Paul. I think just to wrap up this discussion, it's not the idea of tonight and having Paul share what he's doing and what he's building. We might all have our different ideas. It's not that everybody's going to sign up, or it's not that, we're not promoting one political view. The idea was first to understand the dynamics of how a movement and how people get together to make things happen, which is part of what we're learning about in the global health policy course. That's one. And the second is to understand what can be done in the face of political polarization and political violence. And I think the other point I really wanted to for everyone to understand, which I think really came across tonight, was absolutely it's important that we all do whatever we feel comfortable doing. But so much of it is, in these kinds of times, much of it is reactive and negative. We're going to protest against having this cut or against having that cut or against, and that's important. But it's also important to be able to have a vision, like to do something positive. And it may be this, for some of you may buy into this, some of you may buy into something else, but it's, I think that I can do something. As Nelson Mandela said, everything is impossible until it's possible. And well, let me have Jose speak first, and then I'll just close.
Yeah, sorry that this was just a great discussion, and everything it just came across so clearly. And I just had a comment about, I know Senator Booker's speech came across in some of the conversation, and I just love that he started and he ended the speech with John Lewis's quote of getting in good trouble and necessary trouble. And also he said in towards the end of his speech, he said, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And I think that was just an important quote that just really showed how much power we have and how much we can do to really overcome a lot of the things that are happening. And I had a very broad question, but I generally actually asked that question about how do we protect those who are fighting and those who have very little protection in advocacy. And so yeah, it was just a very interesting talk, but I just wanted to discuss that a little bit because it was a quote that really resonated with me, and I thought it was very powerful.
Yes, it is powerful. Thanks for both of those. And I'll just end for me and then ask Paul if he wants to say anything at the very end, but it's from somebody who's not famous at all, but I was the humanitarian coordinator in Burundi for 3 years, and it was a country in civil war. And people were just massacring each other. There was just massacres on one side and the other side. And there was one group that was trying to get these two tribes that were killing each other, the Hutus and the Tutsis, and that are still killing each other, to work together. And they had come up, and these people lived separately, and these people had come together, and they had a collective, and they were really trying to lead through love, as Paul suggested. And the army came in and just massacred a lot of them, flattened their village, destroyed their crops. And as the humanitarian coordinator, I was sent to try to figure out what the UN could do to help them. And it was just such a desperate situation. And these people were so courageous, and they had been so crushed. And I remember saying to this woman who was one of the leaders, I said, I'm supposed to know what to say to you because I'm the humanitarian coordinator and I'm supposed to be somebody special. I don't know what to say to you. I have nothing to say. And she just said, this has happened before. And what we always do, we start where we stand. We start again from where we stand. And that has always really inspired me to know that everybody stands in a different place. But if everybody starts where they stand, we might actually move in the right direction. So, Paul, last word to you.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. That's so beautiful. Your faces are so beautiful. I think the last thing I want to respond to about the safety and the security and the fear, I have all those things. I have fear, and I know this is risky, and I feel called to serve in this way. And what I'm drawing on actually is that I have been reflecting on our ancestors, my ancestors, and all of our ancestors, and also, and what I'm kind of sourced from with that is the idea, like tapping into all of the resilience that they all had, we're not the first ones that were enslaved or exiled or abused or, but somehow they survived, and it was with love and resilience. And I know, and then I think forward about my children and grandchildren and then future generations, and I dedicate this work to them, and that we're rising. This is about a love story between people that love democracy and love future generations, and step up and are renewing and are committed to renewal. And it's scary because we're risking our lives, actually. And so like that resilience is what is sourcing me right now and keeping me calm. No, and really, like, this is happening. So, and whatever happens will happen. And we're in this together. That's the other thing. We are in this together. So please reach out to me if I can support your efforts in any way. You can find me on my website. There's a way to email me directly, and drpaulzeitz.org. And I just put that in the chat. Thank you so much. I'm around and appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thanks everyone for tonight.